Alright, so this is for a 2007 Acadia. The symptoms were loose brakes or squishy brakes, or kept saying that the brakes would go to the floor. And originally I thought that that was the brakes needed to be bled the brakes. A week later she said that she had the same problem. So bled the brakes again, drove around myself, and yeah, it did feel the same, but it didn't feel like normally how brakes feel when there's air in the line. It actually felt like you'd press on the brake right away and the brakes would work. Normally when you have air in the line, you press on the brakes and it goes down pretty far before they actually start to kick in. So this symptom was if you put your foot on the brake, they would work, but if you continue to press hard or just put any pressure on it at all for a continued amount of time, the brakes would eventually go to the floor. So to me that sounded like the master cylinder, and that ended up what it is. So unfortunately I already moved the master cylinder because it was so easy. I found it to be way easier to remove the master cylinder than it was to actually get the air cleaner out. Because the original problem that I had was right here, the big giant air cleaner baffle was here in the way. And the problem I was having was to get the screws out. They were a special bit. They were called a Torx bit, and they were specifically a Torx 25 bit. And the ones here in the back I couldn't reach my screwdriver to because they were bumping up against this hardware. So I had to get a bit that would fit inside of a nut driver to make a really super long thing to finally get this air filter out of the way. The tool that I had to create, or put together to get the air cleaner out, was this Torx bit set. So the end of the Torx bit, if you can see it, looks like a, whoops, that's too close. It looks like a little star, and I had to go out buy this special bit, hook it to this big giant long adapter, hook it to the end of the drill, and I was finally able to get it off. Once I had this air filter out of the way, all I did was release the two lines that were connected to the master cylinder. These were 13 millimeter. You're supposed to use a special tool to get these off. So this is the special tool that you're supposed to use to get brakes off, because, or the line off, because it's got more of a, it's got more surface area to connect to it, so it makes it so you don't normally strip the bit or strip the bolt coming out. But it was so easy to get off. I put a little bit of pressure on it, it came right off. Didn't even need to use it. If I felt a lot of resistance, then I would have had to go out and buy a metric version of this tool, because the one I have is only SAE, so I couldn't use it. So like I said, I removed these two lines, and then all I had to do was remove these two bolts that were in the back. I used a swivel socket. It made it really super easy to get to. That was 13 millimeters as well, and connected that, and I was able to get to the back one really easy because I used a swivel socket. You could probably use it just a straight socket or just a straight adapter, but to me the swivel was totally worthwhile and made it a lot simpler to get off. Once I had those two bolts off, I just pulled it out, and once I had it out, I had to disconnect the sensor wire that goes to it. The release for it is on the top. I just had to pry it back with a screwdriver and pull it out, and then it was connected to the reservoir, the brake reservoir where the fluid goes into. I actually had to cut the top of it off because it just presses in. It's just made to snap in once, and that's pretty much it. So you could probably try to wiggle it out and spend a whole bunch of time. I just decided to cut the top off of it, and I'll zip tie it back on when I'm done, and it won't make any difference at all. So that's how easy it was to get this thing out, and you just put it back and it goes right back on this little guy right here. That's how simple it was. So this is what the master cylinder looks like without the reservoir. The little ring was behind it, connected right there. That went to the backing plate. All I have to do when I put the new one in is just make sure that that bolt that's on the firewall, coming through the firewall from the other side of the brake, lines up inside of that hole, and just put those two bolts on, and that's pretty much it. But I'll show you more of the process of bleeding this thing. And inside here, I've got this drated. This is the reservoir. This came off really simple. That's where that brake sensor was. It tells you if you got low fluid. It just had to push these things out. They just snapped right off and pulled off. It was just so simple. It was just amazing how easy it was to change that. The reason why I have this in here is because I'm draining the additional fluid out of it right now.
Alright, here's the new master cylinder. It's ready to go. Got the bleeder kit on it. All I have to do is snap this back on. It literally just snaps in here. I cleaned off this reservoir, so this should just go on literally this easy, like that. Those two are snapped in. Those two are snapped in. That's it. This is all ready to go to be put back into the vehicle. Well, after I bleed this on the bench, then I just got to put these bolts on there. There's other videos that you can find on YouTube that show about brake bleeding. I'm not going to go into that extensively at all. In fact, this kit won't even work because these tubes don't reach, so I don't know how I'm going to bleed this. I might just have to skip that part. We'll see.
Well, this is what it looks like all put back together. Got the two screws down in there tightened down pretty well. Got my little zip tie that I put on that signal coming from the low brake fluid sensor. So that's back the way it was. As you can see, this is why I had to take out the air cleaner. This whole giant baffle is completely in the way. But once you take out the torque screws, plenty of room to get to that. So this is just a really quick overview of how to change the master cylinder on a 07 Acadia.
We'll see you next time on The Garage Guy.